Welcome to our first episode of Realm of Mysteries Beyond. I'm Rob, and this is Brian. Our show is revolved around the discussions of the entire realm of the paranormal, from apparitions, cryptozoology, UFOs, multiple dimensions, and more. So without further ado, Brian, what do we have today?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Rob. Tonight we're going to be talking about one of the most famous hotspots for paranormal activity, the famous Skinwalker Ranch. The Skinwalker Ranch, its first settlers in 1905 was John and Emma Myers, and they had a very unusual, strange experience. I'm not sure if it was the night they moved in, but it was their first experience nonetheless, and it was very strange. Like I said, they had a gentleman approach their door, and when they had met this person, he was in a very nice, like blue sparkling outfit, very strange, not to know that of that time period. And the gentleman had asked the family for a glass of water, and actually stood there and had a lengthy conversation with the family. And the last thing he said before he just up and disappeared was he told the family not to dig on the property. Very strange. About 10 years later, had the same experience. The gentleman in the same outfit came up to him, really didn't say much, and then that was it, just disappeared. No conversation or anything, in the same outfit as before. And then they
Wow.
sold the property in 1994 to Terry and Gwen Sherman, the Shermans. Uh, they owned the ranch for 2 years and up until 96, but let me get to the best part. What happened in those 2 years? Lots and lots of strange activity, from UFOs, countless reports of UFOs, paranormal phenomena, and even cattle mutilations. But what really kind of threw this family off was one day they're standing there and they're out in the field with the cattle, and this huge wolf approached them. They took caution. They were a little cautious about this wolf and wondering, why is this giant wolf approaching us? Well, they were actually able to pet the wolf and all that, and wasn't even going to harm them. So they're kind of a little curious on why this gigantic wolf had approached their land. And they had some cattle kind of just, take off, and except for one who kind of had its head poking through the fence and latched a hold of the wolf, or the cattle. I'm sorry, the wolf latched a hold of the cattle. And then that's when the Myers got their, John Meyer got his 357 Magnum, started shooting at the wolf, didn't harm it at all. The son ran in, grabbed the rifle, started shooting at the wolf. Wolf kind of let go of the cattle, backed away, and they chased the wolf off. Well, when they chased the wolf off, they had like a creek in the back, and the wolf just disappeared. But that wasn't it. They had a lot of strange activity on the property. But there were a couple that really caught my interest besides all those, because those are really talked about a lot, is the wolf and the UFOs and whatnot. But they had, I don't know if you heard about these ones, Rob. You ever heard of the sentient mist?
No, I haven't.
Well, this is actually described by Bigelow researchers as a neurological electricity. This unique entity is completely black in color and takes the form of a thick smoke. The smoke is described like a disembodied skin of black electrified energy. The theory holds that this is a pre-transitional embodiment of a not yet formed entity as it emerges from a portal or a flash drum. The mist is known to take form of a human or animal and has tentacles in which is used to toxify its victims. The victims the tentacles are inserted into the victim's mouth and therefore suffocating the lungs. And once the victim has been suffocated, it is then transported to the spirit world.
That's interesting, Brian, because that reminds me of a lot of reports in the paranormal realm of ghost hunting. And you have witnesses that see like this black mist. A lot of times this happens during the issue with the sleep paralysis situation. And for this activity to be happening on the Skinwalker Ranch as well, I mean, I wonder if it's one and the same.
It's a possibility. I do know that there is one out there that not even a part of the history when it comes to this ranch. Nowhere, not even. But I found very strange is there is a similarity on one thing that really caught my attention. And the similarity is that this sentient mist, it has its tentacles. But there's only one other entity I know of that has been known to have tentacles, and that's the Slender Man.
The Slender Man. But Brian, do you seriously believe in the Slender Man?
To be honest, no.
Okay. All right. Well, at least we got that confirmed. So, I mean, besides the similarities of, Slender Man and this situation, wouldn't you think that it would make more sense of maybe somebody dreamt this and that's how it got reported? Or, I mean, I understand that you were saying that they can see these out in the open, but I mean, let's really think about it here. So this thing has tentacles and it takes form of a spirit, or what else did you say it can take form of?
It can form of a human or an animal.
A human or an animal. And so does this materialize into just a shadow figure of an animal or a person, or is this materialize into like an actual looking person if you were to be face to face with this thing?
I believe it can materialize instead of a full, like person or animal, but more of a shadow. That's what I believe. I believe it would take, the shadow of a human or an animal rather than a full solid, animal or person.
Gotcha. So then this could actually be chalked up as a shadow figure as well, in that aspect.
Correct.
Huh. All right. Um, did you find anything else in research or anything else that maybe happened on here that not many people know about?
Actually, I did. I did. This one's a little strange, more than the sentient mist, I believe. You ever heard of the water babies?
Water
Or,
baby. Boy, it
or
sounds like something that we used to be able to get at Toys R Us.
yeah. Well, they're known as the water babies or the crying babies, and I'll explain a little bit about them. Um, they're known to the local Ute natives as, forgive me if I get this wrong, the Powapits. This entity commonly inhabits the surrounding waterways. They can be recognized by their vocalizations, which mimic the sound of a crying baby. According to the local lore, once the curious bystander goes to investigate, he or she is then dragged underwater and drowned. The creature is said to have a human form with long dark hair and the size of a small child.
Huh. Well, that's definitely not something that we would find at Toys R Us. So Wow. Okay. So it's almost like what they talked about back in the olden times of sirens, where these entities would call these captains of the ships, closer to danger in order to destroy their ships or come to a lower tide area to where could cause destruction to either their ships or even death. So it almost seems like the same kind of phenomenon where these things are calling to people and they're getting killed by them. They're almost drawing people out and then drawing people in to attack them. It'd be really interesting if we can find maybe some survivors that this has actually happened to, and maybe they can give us a heads up of what they experienced. However, if it was me, I probably wouldn't want to rehash that experience. But hey, if anybody out there actually has experienced this, feel free to contact us and let us know. We'd like to know more about your story. So, Brian, actually, I've looked into a couple of articles as well that aren't as known as, the Skinwalker UFO activity and even some of the orbs. Um, Actually, some of the things that I found were pretty interesting. And again, for all this stuff to be happening on this property, it's very rare that one property would have all these different occurrences, um, which was a wide span of the paranormal itself. I mean, again, paranormal covers so many different aspects. You figure, like we said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be covering cryptozoology, UFOs, apparitions, multiple dimensions. And it seems like the Skinwalker Ranch has all of these, which is probably one of the rarest occurrences ever and rarest locations ever. But again, it's amazing to hear some of the stories. And here's one of the stories that I actually read on, and I was pretty intrigued about it. The first one that I looked up is portals. And Brian, as you know, I'm very much into the whole multiple dimensions and, parallel dimensions and all that kind of stuff. So seeing that this occurrence actually happens on this property as well, it really drew me in to, read this report. They did say that a very bright flash of light, which illuminated both the sky and the ground. It has been described as like a window to another world or dimension. The bright light may have been the result of daylight in this other dimension or location shining through this window into our own time and space. Rumor has it that the orange portals emit living creatures, and the blue portals allow vehicles to pass. It's been seen to the west of the ranch, 500 to 1,000 feet in the sky, likely the source where strange non-native animals, intelligent entities may be entering ranch property. Manipulation of time, space, or unique energies to create a doorway to a unknown location or reality. Now, again, I find this really intriguing because, again, all this activity that's going on, maybe it's actually coming from these portals or a different dimension, and maybe there's a rip in time to where these things are going through. And maybe it's secluded to this actual location to where all these beings and creatures are actually coming to this area here. And who knows, once they come into this area, I wonder if they'll be able to travel on our dimension and, walk off. This is in Utah. Who's to say that they don't start walking off into Arizona or Nevada, or, even as far as uh, Washington, or going into Canada. So, I mean, I don't know, Brian. What do you think about the idea of these portals being in this whole situation, or in this location, as we're talking about it now?
Well, it's definitely very interesting. I mean, portals are. I mean, how do we know that they weren't like these flashes of light, that they weren't like coming from, a flashlight, or just lights from a plane or something? Of course, I mean, we don't know. I mean, they would know. We don't, because we're not there. They are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you mentioned, because we're sitting here talking about portals. I was just talking about the sentient mist. You getting something that's coming through a portal, and you're talking about things are going through. Certain objects are able to go through different colors of portals. So I mean, it's portals are they're very interesting, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, the flashes of light. How do we not know that it's a reflection of some kind of light? And maybe they're seeing things. When they see the flashes of light, it's so bright, and their eyes are trying to adjust. And as you're blinking, if you're trying to adjust your eyes, you're not making these images as you're trying to adjust your eyes.
Right. So, actually, you're absolutely right. I mean, just like when you get your picture taken and the flash goes off.
Right.
Okay. And, granted, you blink your eyes, and yet you see the image in like this aura of you trying to get your eyes adjusting and everything like that. And depending on the area that you were looking, it may end up looking like a person, or an animal, or an object. And, it's almost matrixing of the eyes
Mm-hmm.
when something's, not there. Now, if these reports come back to where, they see these flashes of light, and even after their eyes adjust, they can still physically see the thing standing there, or running down the field, or some craft hovering over their head, then that's a completely different story. But, most of the reports that we get is that, oh, they see these things and then they disappear. So, if there are reports that these things are lingering around, then yeah, it's probably more credible. But you're right. I mean, how do we know that these things aren't from somebody's spotlight? Um, you know, how do we know that this didn't come from a military aircraft that is possibly searching the area, or any of that? I mean, most reports have said that they had no evidence of any of these kind of things happening. Like, if it was a military aircraft, obviously you're going to hear the noise from that aircraft. So again, it all depends on the reports. But if they're saying that there has been no evidence whatsoever of any noise of any aircraft while this phenomenon is going on, and yet things are still there even after their eyes adjust, it'd be interesting to see. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, I mean, those are good points, Brian. Absolutely good points. One of the other articles that I did find, there are flash drones. This kind of goes into uh, orbs, I guess. And I'm not a big fan of orbs, but I found this kind of interesting, and we'll see what you have to say about it, Brian. So these are a pulsating spherical ball of light. The light appears bluish to a yellow-green glow. The light it casts is not extremely bright, but will cast light on objects immediately surrounding the orb. Typically, there is more than one orbs gathered. They have the ability to hover and make no noise. There appears to be no physical shapes supporting these orbs. A characteristic feature that is that they will pulsate their light intensely for a matter of seconds, growing extremely bright, and then fading away to nothing as if the object simply vanished. Apparently, these have been witnessed during the day, but are more visible at night. They have been seen transforming into other animal shapes and is suspected of having the ability to transmorph into the shape of local living animals, which is kind of interesting considering the fact that it's a lot of like what you researched, Brian, about the mist.
Hmm.
And so going on, they can affect other electrical objects and knocked out the power to the ranch itself. They shift between a visible and invisible state as they pulsate on and off. These are intelligent and purposeful like in their nature. It is suspected that they are some sort of transportation vehicles for another intelligence or drones for this intelligence. They have a role of observing. They are unique in that they appear almost curious about any humans they come across. They seem to easily detect your presence and may be influenced by meditative thoughts or requests. It is believed that their function is to observe, report, and to transport either consciousness or actual entities within them, as if some sort of vessel. This is the most interactive of all anomalies on the ranch and will pursue and entertain its viewers. The flash drones tend to take on a more interactive role if the observer is alone, possesses the ability to generate a state of uncontrollable panic in those targeted, witnessed working in groups in a predator-prey kind of fashion. The sensation of being hit by one is described as being hit by a high-velocity warm water balloon, the after effects of which immediately evaporate away. However, a state of depression typically follows, lasting for days to weeks. Although speculative, the light may only travel in a light-off configuration. When the light is visible, the object appears stationary. However, it disappears only to reappear in a different location. This postulates that the light may possibly be phasing in and out of one location to the next. Artificial or biological like intelligence. The light radiated is seen in a 180-degree manner and does not cast light behind it. Now, I don't know, Brian. That's a lot of information. And honestly, like I was, saying in the middle of the discussion, for it to take form of animals, human beings, it's almost like you're what was it called? Some mist, your
Sentient mist.
sentient mist. So only now these are in the form of orbs, and these lights are flashing on, flashing off, and then these are going from orb form to some physical form as like an animal or a person or something like that. But also, what's interesting about these is that it entices their victim almost like your water baby entity that's been seen and witnessed on the ranch. So it seems like everything that we've noticed so far on this ranch is has been pretty mischievous to the point of wanting to harm whoever witnesses these these sightings. So I don't know. I mean, I know that the land is pretty sacred. I know that the Ute tribe don't even want to step foot on the property. In fact, they're forbidden to even set foot on the property. So I wonder what all this is. I wonder how long that this has been like this. I mean, has this been like this from the beginning of time? Or was there maybe a time that maybe a window or a rip in reality or dimension, may have you, happened? And that's when all this activity really started exploding on this property. And my other questions are this too: is the earliest owner of this ranch and property were visited by this guy that you know they had a nice lengthy conversation, but one of the last things that he told him was not to dig. I wonder if that's what started this activity, was actually doing that initial dig, and it just kind of opened Pandora's box.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely agree with you on that, though, Rob. Definitely. I mean, there is definitely something that really makes me sit here and think, because this will probably be for another discussion. But I do know that the Ute tribe and the Navajos, they used to work together, I believe, during the Civil War. And there came a time to where, once the Utes were able to get a hold of some horses from the Spanish, they actually sold members of the Navajo as slaves to New Mexico markets. And once they did that, the Navajos were kicked out of that area by the Utes, and they were only allowed to come back to the four corner areas of their homeland. But the Utes were they were very, they tried to keep away from the Navajo, but they noticed that, on that land, they started seeing the Navajo come around more often, and they come to find out that the Navajos cursed that land. So it really makes me wonder, okay, they cursed this land. Could that be a cause for all this activity as well, as a curse that's fallen upon the land? Could it be what you described as, the Myers? They are like, oh, this mysterious man is telling us not to dig on the property. Gee, I wonder why. Let's go ahead and dig anyways and find out why he's not wanting us to dig on our property. There's
Right.
got to be some logical explanation as to what is making all this activity happen. Is it the land that was cursed? Is it because they were told not to dig on the property, and they said, to hell with it, we're going to do it anyways? There's got to be a logical explanation as to why all that's happening, and it's been happening for, well, many, many years, and it's still happening to this day.
Right. And Brian, what I was thinking was what you just said. The Navajo had cursed the Ute tribe. So this really could be, stemmed from that. And that anybody that sets foot on that area, is cursed as well. It's not just the Ute tribe. I mean, the Ute tribe is the smart ones. They're the ones that aren't stepping foot on the property. But because of that curse, other people could be affected by it. And being the fact that that ranch sits right in the hot spot of that situation, I mean, who knows what's actually coming out of that area. I mean, I tend to think that if they're being unleashed, so to speak, on this property, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily always going back to where they came from. I mean, there's also been reports of, people seeing wildlife while they're there, just kind of visiting outside of the area of the Skinwalker Ranch. And they're saying that a lot of the wildlife there are actual skinwalkers themselves, because they can take form of just regular wildlife. I mean, between wolves, crows, coyotes. So pretty much any wildlife that would be native in that area, a lot of people have been saying that it's a good possibility that those aren't specifically that. They're not specifically animals, but yet they are the skinwalkers that, the Navajo tribe have transformed to. And more or less, they're the ones that they're keeping surveillance on that area. So I don't know, but obviously, there's been 4 different residents there. It goes all the way back to the Myers, which was in the early 1900s. And then the Sherman family purchased it in 1994. Is that correct, Brian?
Yep. Yep.
And then in 1996, Robert Bigelow, who is in charge of Bigelow Aerospace, as well as he's also in charge of MUFON. He took over the ranch after the Shermans, and just recently sold the property to a real estate mogul. So again, I mean, right now, there is a lot of talk about the Skinwalker Ranch, especially on special shows right now. Lately, they've actually opened it up since this new owner has taken ownership of this area, and they're doing TV shows about it now. Finding evidence like some of the reports that we've read about, I don't know if they've come across that much, but like you and I know, Brian, I mean, when we go and investigate a haunted location, it's, ghosts aren't on cue, spirits aren't on cue, activities not on cue. So just because of the fact that, maybe this show doesn't produce any real hard evidence doesn't mean that the stuff really isn't going on. So, but, that's why we discuss it. And that's why we have this show. We'd be excited to hear from anybody that may have any information about either our articles that we read today, or if there's something new, even if you want to have us dig a little bit deeper in research and find something specific about activity that's happened on this ranch. We'd be more than willing to take a look at that for you. Well, that wraps up Skinwalker Ranch for this episode. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to be notified of more videos coming up soon, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you have any comments and want to share maybe your experience, or again, want us to dive a little bit deeper into some of the discussions that we talked about today, or even a new discussion or a new story or report, make sure to comment and let us know. But until then, we'll catch you on the realm of the mysteries beyond. Again, I'm Rob, and this is Brian, and we'll see you at the next episode.